All right, so one battle. The opening is great with Leo and Tiana Taylor setting up the world. How did you want to shoot their idealistic world and kind of their opening part of the story?
I mean, at the beginning of the movie was all about just making just this really rough look, a lot of industrial colors and things like that. And Flo Martin, the production designer, had laid out this whole thing, and she just did she and um, Anthony Carlino, the set decorator, had designed this whole situation, very shiny things, and it was all about just making, just movement and just yuckiness. And this industrial world that we'd play, these colors that we'd play against the normal stuff later.
My favorite scene actually is when you have to shift in the future, Leo and Chase's big scene. You had to totally reset his life, reset the tone of the film. What was the process kind of shooting that scene? Because I think everything emotionally, falls on that scene. Because you got to establish the relationship in a couple of minutes. What were your thoughts on that, shooting that?
It was just, that was some of the first stuff we shot in the film, and it was really the beginning of the movie was actually the thing we shot at the end. That was our last thing we shot. And so but the stuff with her it was just about creating a warm environment that would be kind of like more of a familial setting, and then hijinks ensue.
And how about shooting the evil white supremacy society with Lockjaw? How fun was kind of shooting those scenes?
That was just crazy. Every day you'd come to work and you're just like, this is nuts. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
So I want to ask you, Frankenstein. My favorite sequence is the sequence in the farmhouse, the old blind man, and you really let Jacob Elordi's character grow. Like you want to give a lot of space. What was the process of shooting that allow his character to develop and grow in that pivotal sequence?
Well, the great thing about the movie stylistically is that I tried to make each of the episodes self-contained and shot in a different style. So the childhood is very stately, it's very Barry Lyndon-esque. Then his youth is very active, the camera is moving everywhere. And then the creature's tale is a fairy tale. And there are barely any words because the creature has almost no words. So it's purely cinema. We follow him, we see him do, we see him hear, listen. So the passage is different and the camera style is different. So how you land is by sharing as opposed to qualifying. You don't qualify, you just experience it with him.
And the dungeon was much darker though. How did you want to approach shooting the dungeon scene?
Well, what you do, first of all, you build the dungeon for him. So the colors are, he belongs to the dungeon. It's the same color palette. The arches are too low, so he looks really, really tall. There is a sort of a womb-like quality to it, and he's birthed through a canal. So, you plan everything a little bit for him to be expelled into the world through the birth canal.
Another wonderful film. But this one's slightly different than your previous one. What was the decision to be, actually on the ground with the soldiers, more in the fight?
We are still true to our idea to be realistic, hyper-realistic, to portray the war in a way that people whose stories we're telling are experiencing, so the audience can be there in those besieged cities, and in this case, in the case of this film, in the trenches with civilians who are defending their homes or who are trying to liberate their homes. So literally to walk with them. And I think now in the world, we live in a world that is at war. I mean, probably there are still peaceful places, and hopefully they will remain peaceful. But every day there is more and more and more conflict. So we have to learn how to talk about war. We have to learn how to remain human in war. We have to learn how to find that humanity. And it is a true search for a language, the language that will speak to generations that they're coming after us about what was happening now, and hopefully the world will still be in one piece.
But what was the relationship? Because you had to build a relationship of trust with the soldiers, and some of them tragically were injured or what was the process of building trust between you and the people fighting a cause and fighting for their lives?
The process is to involve them in the process of shooting. They have cameras too, as we have cameras, and we are on the battlefield, and they are on the battlefield, and they are recording their battles. And those are the most important moments of the film. Also conversations with them, also when we speak with them about their families, about their feelings. but their experience. And their experience is shown from their helmets, from their eyes. And I think that's a very unique perspective that is given, became possible with the modern technologies. And, just submitting to that, being, letting them do it and just walking that way with them, is what makes this, this experience true for the audience.
All right, so you first read the script at the studio. I'm sure you loved it. But what was your initial, like, oh my God, how are we going to pull this off thought?
Yeah, it was, oh shit, what did I get myself into? No, it was something, I've done a lot of oneers, I've done a lot of music videos, and that are oneers. I've done a lot of shows and movies that have oneers within them, so I felt very ready to take this on. And for me, it was really exciting because I knew that the team surrounding it understood what it was going to take to pull it off. So I felt supported in that way. I think a lot of times people want to do oneers, but they don't fully understand what it takes to pull it off, right? And our Seth and Evan, our directors and kind of leaders, really knew what the journey they were taking us on to some degree. They knew it was going to be difficult. They knew there were going to be sticking points, and that's why I signed on, is because they knew how hard it was going to be. So it was a bit of an oh shit moment. And day one, like I just said in my speech, I mean, our first day we did 23 takes of our first shot, and we still didn't nail it. We ended up going back and reshooting that scene.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't immediate. It took a lot of testing, a lot of failing, and we finally got there.
And my last question is, you have great comedy, great mishaps, you got a lot, and good technical, but you also got good drama going on at the same time. What was the process of you making sure you capture, keeping the dramatic element, don't get lost totally in the comedy?
Just giving the space for the actors to do their thing. I mean, we have such incredible talent. These guys all had such good instincts, and we really relied on them to tell us, either through their performance or literally on set when they needed that moment or that space. And we felt it, and we all worked together to play with scenes and workshop scenes as we shot them. It was always on the page, but when we started shooting it, we were workshopping every beat of it, and we were finding those moments with them and just trying to support everyone on the journey.
All right, so you first read the screenplay.
Yep.
What was your gut reaction? Like, wow, this is awesome, but man, this would be a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the challenge is that that it's New York, right, and that there's so much happening, and it's kind of a raw story, and you want to be honest to New York. I mean, I'm from the East Coast.
Me too.
And, yeah, right, and in recent years, I'm not sure how many series have really represented it honestly, and that was a really big thing. So for me, like to come back with the dailies and feel that the city was just as much as character as anything.
Obviously, the Black Rabbit's pretty important. It's your set. It's Jude Law doing the cosplay. What were the process of shooting those scenes to kind of give the feel of the Black Rabbit and his character?
So yeah, I mean, the Black Rabbit was always meant to feel a little silkier, a little bit warmer inside, maybe a little bit more of a safe place for those characters. And then as we go out into the real world, it's more raw and the honesty of the past that haunts them. We feel more. So it was a nice contrast to play the rabbit against that.
And as the brothers, because Jason Bateman's character is a little darker, did you shoot him differently? Like with those scenes where you're kind of the underbelly, you wanted to shoot much differently than you shoot Jude Law in his home setting of the Black Rabbit?
Well, I kind of had a joke on the show that you could put a Nook light on the map box and Jude Law would look great. So we didn't really have to do much. But and Jason too. I mean, Jason just always looks really good. But I don't think we didn't shoot them separately. We really just we lit scenes, and the further I went into the series, and again, Justin Kurzel, my director for this episode, he came to me at the beginning and he's like, I don't want to see any lights. I don't want to be see you tweaking on turnarounds. We're just going to light this, or we're going to be raw. We're not going to do any process trailer. We're just going to jump in the camera with the cars, and it was just really a great way to work, and it pushed me, but I think that rawness was really felt.
Now, we have cinematography students that watch our show. I'm curious, is there any scene or moment you would like them to watch from this episode? Could be even a small or intimate moment, something like, take a look at this one. I'm really proud of what we did here.
From this episode? I mean, there's a bunch of them, but there's a scene where they get chased through a mall in Chinatown, which is really a great scene, and we had we must have had like 4 cameras that day, and like, you know, a lot of us when we shoot, you know, we sometimes you scoff at like, oh, like you have, you know, you like to do it with one camera and be precious about things. But we came up with devised a great way to have cameras in areas leapfrogging, so that there's always a camera waiting in the next part of the scene. And again, I think there's just such a rawness and beauty in that scene that's one I would love for people to look at.
So Royal Tenenbams, one of my favorite films you did of Wes Anderson. What was it like to try and develop your style and look? Because it was earlier days with Wes. What was it like trying to get how you're going to shoot his films, and especially that one?
Well, Wes always had a library of you know, DVDs and books and pictures and things that we would do, and we would go to museums and talk together. And because it was New York, and he was living in New York at the time, he knew all kinds of places, and so we just kind of built our visual grammar through doing those sorts of things, you know, looking at movies and saying we like this, we don't like this, maybe we can incorporate this idea. And you know, again, we'd go to the locations and be very careful, map out exactly what we were going to do. So.
But conversely, you do something like Grand Budapest, which is awesome.
Yes.
Completely different look and style. How did you approach that? Maybe slightly different than something like Royal Tenenbams.
Well, it even went a few steps further with that one. We were in Germany, in a little town called Görlitz. And, you know, he assembled all these movies from the 30s that we looked at, and tried to look at how they used the frame, because we were shooting 137 for the first time. And again, we spent a lot of time looking at locations and talking about how we would modify them with the production designer, and how we would light them and how we would shoot them. So it's a very extensive prep period.
It must help that you production designer Adam Stockhausen for a lot of your films. Yeah. Wes, how is it having that team together for so long? You kind of like a language that you guys just know each other well.
It's pretty great. And before that, we had Mark Freeberg as our production designer, and David Wasco. And then we have Milena Carnanero does the costumes. So it's a pretty tight team, and everyone, you know, brings a great deal to the film. And you know, we spend a lot of time testing and in the prep, you know, and figuring things out in the prep, basically. So
Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Yes.
Beautiful shot. When you first read the script, what was your initial thoughts and concerns? Like, how are we going to pull this off?
Well, the script was incredible, and I was just excited to shoot it because it was not only very funny and great characters, but it was set in a great period of American history in the late 1950s in terms of design and New York City history, and so I was just excited to go there. And when I went to New York, the first thing that Amy hit me with was this style of shooting elaborate oneers, and we weren't shooting on sets for the pilot, we were shooting on location. So my first thing was, how are we going to run the camera around an apartment in New York City and light it and all that stuff. But it was just a very thrilling and fun experience. I wasn't worried too much about it. I was just happy to do it.
And how did you collaborate with Rachel to kind of like capture her character, you know, working with her?
Well, Amy's biggest thing is that she moves the camera a lot, and she wants the actors to look great all the time while the camera's moving, which is the real challenge. You know, it's easy if the camera doesn't move, and it's easy to move the camera if the lighting doesn't have to be great, but to have to do both together was always the thing we were fighting for. And luckily, Rachel is very easy to light, and you know, so much of the show, she's in a harsh spotlight from the pilot on through all 5 seasons, and I could hit her with a Lico follow spot dead on, and she'd look fantastic. So that made my life a lot easier.
So, all right, so Taz, when you first read the script, what was your gut reaction of like, how are we going to pull this off?
Honestly, the scripts were so good that it was more of a, how do we not mess this up? I felt like they were so fully formed, the characters were so beautifully written, and so the challenge for me was how to truthfully tell the story that was really so well put on the page. Yeah.
What scene was most challenging?
Ooh, that's good. Every scene is challenging in its own way. Sometimes the scenes that you think are going to be the most challenging end up coming together, you know, the most simply, and some that you think are going to be a breeze, you know, really put the brakes on the day. But I think one of the most challenging scenes was actually one that was shown in the awards tonight. It's kind of a one shot through a dark house at night during a robbery, and you know that took a lot of coordination between camera, lighting, stunts, acting. All the departments have to work in harmony together to make something like that happen.
We're going to go back in time. What matters most? What was it about that project that really drew you and you're most proud of?
I was brought onto that project by a producer that I'd done a couple of movies for, and she insisted that I meet the writer-director, who was Jane Cusimano. And in our interview, Jane explained to me that she had advanced breast cancer, and she only had about 3.5 months to live. And her husband liquidated some of his companies to raise the money to make this low-budget movie that would star their daughter, Polly. And she asked me if I would come to Texas, to Vega, Texas, to shoot the movie because the producer told her that I would keep the movie going on those chemotherapy days when she would be very disoriented. And so I went to Vega and we shot the movie. Jane and I had a wonderful collaboration. And when we finished, I had arranged for a friend of mine who was an editor to put together the movie. So very rapidly after filming was over, she could see the entire movie. Now, I had to go to Morocco to shoot a movie right after, and I gave my color timing notes to the lab. And a week into my being in Morocco, I got a call from Jane's husband saying that Jane had passed away. But 3 days before she passed away, she was able to sit in the lab and watch the entire movie from beginning to end. And she told Jim, "Tell Michael thank you."
Is there anyone scene that really you're most proud of? Something for our students maybe to kind of like take a look at from that?
No, I mean, it was mostly about the experience of making the movie and shooting the movie because Jim and Jane were not professional filmmakers. So it was like a mixture of making the movie and having an adventure. Like Jim always wanted to sit on a boom, a camera crane. So we put him on the camera crane and boomed him over this big field of cows and he took pictures and stuff. So it's those moments that I remember most.